Welcome to Backlash Unfiltered, a podcast series by UNRISD. Through in-depth conversations with leading scholars, activists, and policymakers, we will explore the rise of anti-gender movements, their impact on social development, and the historical and geopolitical forces that sustain them. This series is not just about understanding the backlash. It is also about resilience and imagining a fairer future.
Welcome to Backlash Unfiltered. I'm Karima Cherif, Head of Communications and Outreach at the United Nations Research Institute for Social Development, UNRISD, and I'll be your host for today. In these episodes, we will look at one of the most powerful forces shaping our world today, technology. Technology can empower women, connecting them to education, healthcare, and civic participation, but it can also reinforce patriarchal power through harassment, disinformation, and surveillance. It's both a weapon and a lifeline in the struggle for gender equality. Joining us today is Annika Ojala, an activist and global speaker and strategist on technology and social impact. After a decade shaping digital rights and gender policy from the European Parliament to the World Economic Forum, Annika now advises organizations and companies on technologies and social change. Annika, welcome to Backlash Unfiltered.
Thank you so much, Karima. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so happy to connect with you and get to make this special episode with you. I'm so happy to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Annika. So I want to start with the darker side of the story. So in one of our conversations, you described technology as the new phase of the old enemy. I thought this sentence was very powerful. So what do you mean by that? So how is technology accelerating the gender backlash we see globally?
Yeah, I love to use that expression because I feel like it resonates with so many people and it really shows the face and the strategy that is being implemented with new tools, right? So technology didn't invent inequality. It just gave inequality basically a faster connection. We see this new form of violence in all aspects of our life. We can see it's how AI incorporated in our lives will help women negotiate lower salaries, for instance, which then deepens the pay gap and gender inequality, as well as the use of AI and tech in gender-based violence. So one of the big examples in this is, for instance, online violence that we see a lot targeting feminist politicians, activists, also journalists, which silences the conversation that we're supposed to be having and the policies we're supposed to be putting forward in order to accelerate gender equality and progress. One very scary form of this new face of the old enemy is the use of smart homes to increase violence and oppression. Women specifically can now be locked remotely inside their house. The perpetrator can raise the temperature, they can put on TVs flashing on all nights and use basically methods of torture on these women who have no means to escape it because it's all done remotely. We can also see this in judicial systems or in predictive policing. So women who come from migrant backgrounds, for instance, racialized women can really be even more attacked by not only misogyny, but also other forms of systemic inequality that are built into these systems that are being used. And one of the most terrifying ways I find that is really imposing this violence is the denial of access to information. So when we're online and we're using different platforms, the way that women formerly were not allowed to get information, say back in the days, we were not allowed to go to university or we were not allowed to learn how to read in many countries around the world, which is still the case. Right now, online information is not available because AI tools are censoring this information online. It can be very crucial information for our health, for our well-being, to understand how to get help. And if we use tools that are not designed by women for women to basically regulate and allow what is allowed to be said, we're creating tools of oppression. We're curating tools of division that's just going to drive us apart and send us back when it comes to equality. And right now, what I find is so essential and why I'm so driven and passionate by this work is that we can't afford to not do anything. We cannot afford to sit and wait for things to get better. Just as we've always done before, we really need to reclaim this space, just as we did when it was about getting a right to vote or getting the right to open your own bank account. This is one of those pivotal moments where we need to be not only fighting, but building better solutions and write the future of equality.
Thank you, Annika. I think this is very important, and we'll discuss a bit later on what are actually the positive and transformative potential of technology. But before going there, I want to dig a bit more into the dark side, let's say. But I was reading how 3 million people remain offline still. Most of them are women and girls. Beyond connectivity, so what are the hidden barriers that prevent women from fully benefiting from digital tools, from your experience?
Mm-hmm. This is definitely the starting point where we need to understand who even has access and what do we understand by access, because access globally can mean so many things. You might have access to internet, but you might not own or be able to have economic power to buy a phone. So for instance, a smartphone that's owned by a family member, you might not have safe access to use. You cannot access certain apps or services to get information because it's not your phone. You might have a phone, I'm using the phone as an example here, you might have a phone that connects to internet, but you don't have the digital literacy to understand what to do with it. You might have an AI assistant, but you have no idea what to do with it. You might disclose information that can be backfiring and used against you. So being connected is such a multifaceted experience in our life. So we need to also look at it in a way that there's no one solution on how to connect us deeper that fits, especially around the world. One demographic that I'm very, very, very passionate about is elderly people and elderly women who are often left out of this conversation because based on the access to education that they have had and the fact that women also live older than men on average, if they've been in a straight partnership, their partners might have passed away and they might be left to handle all aspects of their lives by themselves. So here we might see online banking becoming an issue if there's no physical banks left anymore. Also, what is care work going to look like in the future? How are we going to define connection if care work is going to be done by robots, for instance, in the future? If you're an elderly person, you don't understand how robots work or how you can operate them in general. How is this going to impact your life? Are you going to be able to include this in your life or not? When it comes to connectivity, there's also still very big loopholes and ways that the people who are supposed to be providing services and especially allowing people to have access to digital services and platforms have been left out of history books for way too long. And here, for instance, I'm talking about indigenous communities as well. So when you look at Native American communities, for instance, struggle a lot. And because there are no broadband networks installed in those regions, this became a very, very, very large issue during COVID because everything moved online. And I believe it's less than half people on tribal lands in the Northern American continent who have access to broadband. What does this mean? We also know that violence against Native American indigenous women is much, much higher than white American or Northern American persons. Not only that, looking at different categories, we also see women and girls with disabilities are very often excluded from digital literacy programs, as well as folks who are wanting to learn, but they live in countries where digital surveillance doesn't allow them to have access. So here again, we're talking about control, ultimately, whether the denial to connectivity and connection comes from the state in which you're living, where internet is not free. You cannot connect the way you would want to get access to get help because there is monitoring and surveillance, which is a huge human rights concern. But this control can also come from a very individual level, from a partner, from a family member, from a relative. And what is the antidote to control? It's agency. It's agency and information. So in order for us to create connection and empowerment, we really need to come down to basics. We need to make sure that everybody has the agency and the right to choose, to have the options possible. And we need to make sure that these solutions are not just the one size fits all, but that we look at specific intersectional forms of discrimination as well that impact women, because women are not just one group. So here again, age is a very interesting factor, geographic locations. So when we're talking about 3 billion people, to come back to your question, yes, the majority of these are women and girls. Majority do come from the global south, but then even deeper, we need to look at the roots of this oppression and denial of access to information and start seeking local solutions together across sectors and partners in these regions.
Thank you, Annika, and you just really serve me the next question as well. Let's go into the positive now. And we've seen a lot of challenges. We've seen this coordinated digital attack. You talk about all this smart home abuse and all kind of like ways to silence women and feminist voices. But we also discussed previously that technology, and you also mentioned earlier that technology can also hold a transformative potential when it's designed and inclusively. So what does inclusive technology actually look like to you, and who needs to be at the table when new tools or systems are being developed?
In order to build inclusive technology, we have to hold on to hope, because that's exactly what the people who are building the tech that is oppressing us, discriminating us, don't want us to have. And I found that it at the essence of every single feminist moment in history where we've been able to move beyond the backlash. The backlash we're in now is not new. We've been dealing the same old enemy for a long time. Right now, it just has new tentacles. It has a new face, and it accesses our life in very different places. But we've always had hope. And how I see it, we walk in the footsteps of millions of people who came before us, and there will be millions of people who come after us who will be doing this work. So in order to honor the people who came before us, to seek solutions for inclusive technology, which can then serve the people who are coming after that, Karima, we need a bigger table. We need a really, really big table where the seats are not just for tokenism, but we need to start sharing power, and we need to remember that we have agency in this. When it comes to creating inclusive technologies, it has to start at the beginning, and it has to be monitored in a way of how a product is implemented. It has to be part of the infrastructure, and we do have examples of that. This is not something that is impossible to do. We can look at all the other inventions in technology throughout the years where we made progress with regulation, which is one very important part. But regulation often tends to be one step behind, because innovation is a life force. There's people who are dreamers and creators. They come up with new visions and they make them happen. So regulation kind of always has to catch up. So this is why this big table that we're building, you and I, we're sitting here and we're inviting so many more people to come and join us at this table, because we need civil society. We need persons with lived experiences to be heard at this table, at these gatherings where we're building coalitions and having meaningful conversations, because we cannot afford to do that, to be left out of these conversations. So we need people who are drafting the regulation. We need people with lived experiences of how these technologies are impacting our lives. And we need the folks from the companies. We need them to start showing interest, showing commitment, and understanding that this is better for business as well. This is everybody's business. Leaving an entire part of society out and considering that the impact of your product is going to harm and do harm for generations to come, even possibly. That is not good business. That is not something that you should be aspiring for. So we have this beautiful opening now to look at examples that already exist, beautiful products that exist, and start to replicate the models of those to see, okay, how can we start this conversation early on and then carry it on throughout the product development and afterwards to see the impact assessment of these products.
Thanks, Annika. And it reminds me a bit the conversation where we met at the World UN Virtual Days, where there was a lot of people bringing solutions and showing how inclusive technology is important. It's our chance, to not replicate what's in the real world. So when designed right, technology can be actually part of the solution. So what are some of the examples that from your experience, that you've seen of technology that's empowering women or advancing gender equality?
I think I could go on about this forever, because in order to get in this field of gender and tech and seeing how equality is impacted and also how this goes both ways, you have to be a bit of a dreamer. You have to see things that are coming to life so you can believe that other things can also change. So I'm surrounded by beautiful people who are creating beautiful solutions because they believe and they hold on to the hope. And I'm so excited always to get the opportunity to share them, because I don't think people who are not thinking of this on a daily basis don't even understand the opportunities that they have already. A lot of the innovations that exist already have to do with health. So without even understanding, during COVID, telemedicine, so remote doctor services really expanded access to so many people, especially in rural areas, women and girls. If they have access to internet, they might be able to get counseling or even prescriptions for medication that they wouldn't be able to receive otherwise. In regions where queer rights for queer women, for instance, are restricted, seeing a local doctor might not be possible. Finding a therapist that's trauma-informed and understands the reality of queer women, you can find that online nowadays. You can get menstrual health education, which is a big thing, sexual health education, if your local school is not providing that, as well as new innovations. It's not only what's happening in the digital field online, it's also the products that you have access to. One of my favorite examples is that you can now start getting home HPV testing kits delivered to your house, and you can send them on. They have really, really phenomenal rates, diagnosis rates, and you know, the results are absolutely impressive. And this also gives you the sense of privacy of doing it at home. It's economically much more accessible because going to the doctor might take 6 months of waiting, saving money. Other tools that relate to health can also be wearable technology. Some beautiful examples that I think everybody would love if this is an issue they're thinking about is we've now got fertility tracking earrings. So you can wear jewelry on your body that also monitors. Many people might know about the Aura rings or certain types of wearables that can help you understand your body a little bit more. But now, thanks to femtech innovations, we can also understand our bodies more, understand our cycle, understand our mental health in a new, different ways. Get access and support for endometriosis, which impacts so many women around the world. And where access to health has been under-resourced, we now have companies that are stepping up and saying, hey, let's find solutions for this. Other amazing innovations, I heard this at the AI for Good conference in Geneva, and I have to celebrate this accomplishment because there is a company in Romania that has created wearable glasses for persons who are blind or visually impaired to use if they don't have access or the place they're living in doesn't have guide dogs available or human assistance. So what these glasses do, they use the same technology as self-driving cars to map out your surroundings and give you autonomy and independence to navigate your day-to-day life if for economic or whatever reasons there is no access to other forms of assistance. Isn't this incredible to really find solutions and find the people who are creating these opportunities and services and tools for us to get access beyond what we could have even imagined? A couple of other amazing examples. And I know I'm not going to go through my entire list. I just really, really, really love talking about them. We've got a lot of survival-led justice tools. This is a big term. But as we know, 1 in 3 women are affected by gender-based violence. This is not a small thing. We need to talk about it. Yet helplines are often not available. They're underfunded. So having any forms of other digital tools, apps, trained therapists that are specifically trained to deal with people from different backgrounds, for instance, different languages, local languages, not only you know, the big major languages that are used in countries. Connecting survivors with pro bono lawyers, trained volunteers, all of this is expanding because we have more and more access through technology to do this. And maybe last, the big field that I'm also very, very, very passionate about is education. How can we get more access to education and then enter the work life in a way that empowers us and gives us the freedom to be fulfilling all of our rights and having a beautiful, free life? You can get career guidance online and you can meet people who can mentor you online. You can use AI if it's ethically designed to help you work through job interviews, understand where to go next in your careers. You can get tools and training that can help you participate in civic and political life. So you can understand how to run a political campaign. These sorts of educational materials that were never available before can now find you at your home. Say you have a newborn baby and you have this vision of maybe at some point running in politics, but you don't know how. You can start small. You can do it from your house and then find a community of people who can help you. And again, I think the last and thing that we don't even realize, the same as with health, is that remote work is such a game changer as well. And we cannot ignore that when it comes to understanding the division of care, the career trajectories in the world, and different underrepresented groups in different career paths, for instance. So to be able to offer flexibility for people to work remotely is something that technology can offer, while being protected and while these services need to be taken seriously, and making sure that these solutions are also not gateways to not give the protection or the social coverage or the insurance that these people deserve just because they're working remotely. So it's a dialogue between policymakers, activists, people with lived experience, and the people creating these technologies, because we have an abundance of opportunities that we can do to connect each other, to empower each other. The joy that is ultimately the pursuit of the transition society that we're in.
We always like to close with this call to action. So to our listener, so what would be one action, or what do you want to tell, those people listening, but also activist, policymaker, how can we make this digital world more equitable, and in particular first for women, but in general? So yes, what's that word that you want to call to those people?
If you're a person who is listening to this at home, maybe you're driving your car, you're at the gym listening to a podcast, and you're saying, yeah, okay, but I don't want to get into politics. I don't know if I have time to get into a social movement. That's really normal, and that's really, really, really fine. But maybe have a conversation with a friend. Maybe ask them, have you thought about it? How have you thought about this? What technologies have you taken as part of your day-to-day life recently? And how does that make you feel as a woman? Do you feel like there's some changes in the way that you feel free, the way you feel connected? How is this impacting your life? And have those conversations with the people closest to you. Another beautiful angle that everybody can start having conversations about is, how do we include men in this conversation, both from the way that they are experiencing technology in their life, but also what can we do to offer solutions for men who we still know are the perpetrators of gender-based violence. Men do have a lot of opportunities nowadays to understand and unlearn where these cycles of violence come from. And technology is now opening so many doors for them to learn and to connect by having virtual circles or having access to remote therapy. All of these ways that can help us understand where this violence stems from and what are the alternative ways for us to move forward. And this really also applies for young boys and men who we see now with the use of these technologies are essentially coming algorithmic bait. We see them being targeted misogynistic content, and they're being sent down this rabbit hole of misogyny and violence, which doesn't have to be the case. So why don't we harness the conversations that we can have around how tech is impacting our life to focus on the solutions for actually creating meaningful connections, to understanding how are we still taking on forms of patriarchy that we don't have to include in our day-to-day lives anymore? How can we break the cycle of violence by getting informed and creating meaningful connections through technology? I really want to say the last word that I want to leave people with is agency. We've always had agency, and we always will have agency. It's whether we choose to put it into practice and in which way, at what scale, that's totally up to you. But we don't have to accept things the way they are. Just as the women and the activists and the change makers before us didn't have to accept the way things were before, we hold that power and we hold that agency, building on their joy and their bravery to also move forward in this moment with hope and joy.
Thank you, Annika, to leaving us with this hopeful and also active words, and also for bringing clarity and to such complex topic. You showed us how technology, when designed inclusively, can transform lives. Innovation in health, you talk about education, civic engagement, and already empowering women and marginalized communities, demonstrating that technology can definitely be a powerful tool for equality and social change. So thanks for the work you do, and we wish you all the best. Continue doing this. I know you have a lot of projects ahead, and it's much needed. And then as for UNRISD, we will continue as well to explore how systems of power intersect and how feminist innovation can help us push forward. So one, thank you for joining us, and also to our listeners. And I always like to close with this one claim, let's say, like stay engaged, stay listening, you say stay learning as well, and keep pushing forward.
And that's all for today's episode of Backlash Unfiltered, pushing forward for equality in times of change. For more information and resources, check the links in the podcast description. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for the next episode.